Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Masson, and I want to start by thanking you so much for having me at this incredible event. The world of technology is all about disrupting, being agile, and shaking things up. But today, I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit less buzzwordy that you probably haven't heard in the latest episode of TechCrunch, and that is people. Focusing on people. But before I dive into the topic of empathy in tech, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my journey into the world of the tech scene. At 22 years old, I graduated with a master's in professional communication, and I started my job search. I interviewed at quite a few places, but I immediately fell in love with tech companies. They were young, they were innovative, there were no bureaucracies or red tape. It was all about enjoying the work you were doing, the people you were working with, and making a real impact. I knew immediately that technology was where I wanted to build and establish my career. I was very excited to start at my first tech company. I knew that I would have the ability to make a big impact. With small, agile teams, I was working with some really smart people and being connected to everything. When you're working on a really small team, you get insights into the entire business. That appealed to me. I joined a small, unknown company at the time called Wave, where I got to work with some really smart people on very exciting things. Wave was a freemium model. And if you don't know quite what that means, it means that the base product is completely free. And then there are other ways that you can monetize down the line. This was really, really good for scale. Free means whole bunch of customers. We provided free accounting and invoicing software for micro businesses like photographers, bakeries, and other businesses that were under 10 employees. Often just one, which means when it comes to the customer base, I got to work with some really cool people. I was our community manager, helping to go out, meet people, form connections, and make an impact. As the company grew, we realized that model of in-person connections didn't really scale. And with more people, there was more room for specialization. So I started to focus not just on our local base in Toronto and the GTA, but the whole customer base, which was about 500,000 people at the time. Pretty big, right? How can you drive action with that many people? How can you make 500,000 people change their behavior? How do you incentivize behaviors? What's interesting when you're dealing with people at scale is you still have to understand the individual, focusing on what kind of customers we worked with, how they saw themselves, what did they want to achieve, and what did they want to become? Not just as an outcome, not what were they trying to accomplish using our software, but when you're working with entrepreneurs, their identity is really closely tied to their own businesses. What did they want to achieve with their businesses that they had launched? With their lives, what kind of work-life balance were they looking for? Understanding all of this was really key to driving behavior, focusing on the people and their goals versus just the business outcomes. The company kept growing, and I kept trying to drive behavior and changes for hundreds and thousands of people. No small feat, right? What I realized is if you're talking to 500,000 plus people, it can feel like you're talking to no one. I was working with this almost 100-person team, and we had this massive customer base. But I knew it was time for me to move on and find the next stage in my journey and focus on forming really meaningful connections. I had already learned a ton from the data and how we could get people to take those actions at scale. Now I wanted to apply those same lessons to in-person relationships that would resonate and be a little bit more meaningful for me personally. I was really excited to see the Wave journey continue after I left. And just a few years ago, they became one of Canada's top 10 Canadian exit stories at the time. But my journey had already pivoted into the world of tech to a new organization. I found a new home at Loopio, a company that was only 10 people when I joined at the end of 2016. The founders were smart, there was an incredible product market fit, and most excitingly for me at the time, they had a model with higher value customers and put a huge emphasis on taking care of their customers, understanding them really deeply, and forming more meaningful relationships with a foundation of value. Even more excitingly, taking care of those customers would be my domain as the first dedicated customer success manager. Once again, I found myself at a company that was growing with increased specialization. We brought in dedicated roles like marketing and like product so that we could continue to learn about our customers, share their amazing successes, and evolve our platform to really drive the most value for each and every one of those customers. We kept growing and brought in more specialization and more customer success managers. With this growth, I had the opportunity to move into a leadership role where I was working directly with customers less and less often, but working closely with the team that really owned those customer relationships and drove that value very closely every single day. Good news is, as we specialized, we kept the focus on the individual. I was leading an increasingly fast-growing team, but each person was working one-on-one directly with real people who had real needs and real goals, again, outside of just the platform, their careers, their lives, things they were trying to accomplish. And when I helped to solve problems and find creative ways to drive value, it was always with a focus on those real people on the other end. Now this year, you might be wondering, where are the photos? We actually did a phenomenal virtual retreat. Again, focusing on making sure that the entire organization took time to really connect, focus on each other, focus on the year ahead, form some meaningful relationships, and again, zoom out and focus on our customers and learn a little bit about them. So exciting to see that even in a digital world, we are still prioritizing those human connections. Now that brings us to today. I'm going to be discussing quite a few ways that empathy has impacted my journey in tech. But before I dive in, I want to say how grateful I am to each and every person who is giving me this opportunity to join you today and giving me some of your time. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with each and every one of you and share a little bit about my journey and why I think empathy is the critical ingredient to a career in technology or elsewhere. And that starts with self-empathy. There are so many different kinds of companies, whether you want to work in tech, whether you want to work in finance, whether you want to work in a larger, more established organization. There are so many places that you have the opportunity to work, and you don't have to go to the first place that falls into your lap. There's also different kinds of hustle. There are people who have different abilities at different stages of their career and different stages of their life, and that is okay. If you're not empathetic to yourself, it becomes really foundationally hard to be empathetic to others. You snap, you judge. Suddenly, everyone is less than. You cannot work in an empathy-first fashion if you are not empathetic to yourself. And that is the first topic I want to dive into as we're exploring our careers, as we're exploring everything that's available to us. How do we have a really strong lens of empathy when it comes to ourselves? And one of the first things that's important is really taking the time to know yourself. And I know so many of you are thinking, hey, I've grown up with me. Of course I know me. But it's really rare to take the time to reflect. And if you're not taking that time to reflect on yourself, what makes you happy? Why? How do you get more of that? What is frustrating? What does frustration look like and feel like for you? Is it tension in your shoulders, your hands, your stomach? Where does that tension resonate so that you can start to pay attention and notice when you're getting frustrated much earlier on? If you're not taking that time to really know yourself, it's hard to set yourself up for success. And if you're not setting yourself up for success, it's really hard to set those around you up for success. So we want to understand ourselves. We want to understand our own motivations. What gets us that big, nice boost of energy? We want to be just as curious about our own selves as we are about others around us, about our pains, motivations, and passions. If you work in a customer-facing role, I challenge you to be just as curious about your own motivations as you are about your customers. If you work with technology, be just as curious about yourself as you are about the new software language or anything. Just really embrace that curiosity. I highly recommend, and I know this is a little bit old school, but that's okay. I very highly recommend actually keeping a notebook. So good old-fashioned pen and paper, and just have 2 pages. One of things you love, things that you find really energizing, and ones that bring you down a little bit, things that are frustrating, things that are demotivating. You might be able to do something, but afterwards, you just feel totally tapped out. You are exhausted. Especially early in your career, this can be hugely impactful. Keep this journal for 2 or 3 weeks, and every time you have a great day, write down what happened. Were you collaborating with a team? Did you have a big win that you had clear metrics around? Or did you find having those really defined metrics actually zapped your energy and it was really demotivating for you? Was there a long-term target with really clear breakdowns, or did you have a ton of flexibility and creativity? Write down everything. This is ultimately what brought me to the field of customer success, instead of to something that wasn't the best fit for me personally. So, for example, lots of people say they really want to, work entirely alone. They want flexibility. Flexibility is the most important thing to their schedule. All they want is to be able to work when they want to work. If that's at 3 a.m., that's for them. But then when they start an exercise like this, they might actually come to realize that most of their motivation and their energy came from working with others and being really highly collaborative. So they'll come to realize that being part of a collaborative team is actually one of the most important foundational elements for their future career. That is the type of self-insight and introspection that is going to set you up for success. So knowing yourself, having that empathy for yourself, and understanding it's okay when you're demotivated by certain things, identifying them is what is going to set you up for success. I highly encourage lots of people to do this exercise. I've done it. People on my team have done it, and we've always found it really helpful. Next, don't compromise on spark. You should feel that passion in yourself when you're hustling and going into work. I've heard from so many people that, they call it work for a reason. It's not supposed to be fun. It's why you're being paid to be here. You don't want to be somewhere where you can't be a top performer. You don't want to be somewhere where you can't have that energy and excitement. What's even worse is if you're really demotivated. If you find yourself dragging, you become an energy vampire. You are sucking it out of the room and you're actually demotivating the people around you. So if you don't have that spark, look around you. Is there someone who does? Or are you dragging that energy out of the room? There's a job out there that you will love. Passion can be real, can be energizing, and it can be motivating. When you're passionate, you feed energy to those around you and you energize them. I want to be realistic here. This doesn't mean you won't have hard days. Any job is going to have challenges, hard days. That's okay. There might be problems to solve. There should be problems to solve. You're going to get stuck in the weeds sometimes. But hopefully you find the right role where you enjoy solving those problems. Where most days you find those hard problems really energizing to help solve. That's what you're looking for. Next, burnout. It's real. It can be harmful. Be careful with yourself. An all-night hackathon can be really fun. A career built on all-nighters can be a recipe for burnout. Build a community. Talk to people. Some of the most incredible leaders in their fields tell me that they've needed to take months-long sabbaticals from work because they pushed themselves too hard. They burned out. Take care of yourself. Don't be a hero. Take your vacation days. Take some time to unplug and focus on yourself. So, I'm re-emphasizing this. It's worthy of 2 slides. This year has been hard for a lot of people. Really brutal. A lot of people have not taken their vacation time. Seriously, if you have some sort of HR system, look at how many vacation days you've taken so far. Is it 0? Is it 1? I get that it's complicated. It's a complicated time. You might feel really grateful to have a job, especially if you've got a job right now that you can do remotely. You might have struggled to find a job and be worried about the impression it's going to create if you take time off. You might even be taking your vacation days, but checking email all day while you're off. Maybe last year you used less than half of your vacation days. Maybe you used all of them, but you never really took a break. Maybe you're using all of your vacation days, but you're also regularly working until 8 or 9 o'clock at night in the evenings. Or maybe you feel like now is the time in your career to really hustle. And if you don't have other commitments going on, why wouldn't you? I mean, you've already seen everything good on Netflix. Burnout is not going to set you up for success long-term in your career. You might be able to hustle for the next 3 months. You might even be able to hustle for the next 12, but take a long-term approach. Focus on yourself holistically in your career and make sure that you're hitting that balance and have that healthy balance of self-empathy. Okay, so we're feeling good. We understand ourselves. We understand our own motivations. We are taking care of ourselves. What's next? Team empathy is so critical. Often in tech, you're not going to be working alone. In most industries, you're not working in a complete silo. If you launch something and it's successful, your team is going to grow. You cannot champion your customer if you have silos and communication breakdowns internally. It's also really hard to empathize with your customer if you can't muster up empathy for those you're collaborating with every single day. So first, I want to talk about supportiveness. Supporting those around you is so critical. And one of the easiest ways to gain supportiveness in a culture is to illustrate it. Make sure that you're positioning goals as company goals. If you're seeing someone taking time out of their day to support someone else, actively recognize that kind of behavior. You definitely want to prioritize recognizing things you'd like to see again. People repeat behaviors that are recognized. So if someone is supporting someone else, even in a teeny tiny way, make that something you prioritize and recognize. Make supportiveness a goal in and of itself. This is one of my favorite things about the team at Loopio. We build our goals to be really focused on that supportiveness, and I have never seen a more collaborative team. Everyone is really intrinsically motivated by making sure that their coworkers are succeeding. New people come in, and on day one, they feel overwhelmed by how much support they get from their peers. Everyone wants to help everyone. And as the team grows, someone new comes in, they replicate that behavior because it was so motivating for them. This has been really important in a year of working remotely, where we've had people start their careers remotely. Every person comes, and on day one, they get that huge outpouring of support. They have people messaging them just to grab coffee, chat, get to know each other. If they post a question, they'll immediately have 5 or 6 coworkers eager to help them. And then a few months later, someone else joins our team. And what's great is the cycle is self-reinforcing. And this is so inspirational to see every single day. People genuinely going out of their way to help each other. And it is a behavior that you can create even in a remote world. You just need to prioritize it and recognize it. You can even hire for it. So if you are growing your team, you can make sure that you are really prioritizing people who are going that extra mile. Ask questions about how they support their peers, their teams. Who have they supported recently? This is how you build a culture that is really intrinsically supportive. As the company grows, find ways to make this more inherent. Look for those everybody wins types of situations and recognize them. Shout them out every time you can find a situation where everyone wins. Really take the time to call out just how special that is. One thing we've done is make sure that every time a really big customer launches, we make sure we are introducing multiple people across the team so they have a really collaborative experience. This is important for a few reasons. One, people always feel supported. They have extra relationships. But even internally across the team, having this extra layer of support is huge. I talked about burnout. We can proactively do things like set up the team with a whole bunch of collaboration to allow our team to not encounter those feelings of burnout, which means you've created enough redundancy that someone can go on vacation and unplug and check out and get the benefit of that extra layer of support. So another person, and you're creating learning opportunities internally for extra team members. Really important for the customer, really important for the team, and really important for the team member who's now getting that opportunity to learn and grow. Keep looking for those opportunities within your organization where everyone can help and support each other. Empathy for your team and a one team mindset is huge. Loopio, again, is built on the foundation of really working as one team. We say it everywhere. If you love the people you work with, you want to go in every single day or collaborate with them online every single day. Treating your coworkers as being on the same team is key to an effective communication flow. Effective communication is key to your success. You are going to encounter enough challenges, enough obstacles along the way without having those obstacles come from inside. If you are not communicating effectively, there are going to be additional obstacles created internally. keep that conversation going. Over communicate again. Do it one more time. The more people are informed, the more they can all work collaboratively, effectively together. It is key that you work with all of the different business leaders and you're all steering the ship in the same direction. So this can include little things like encouraging people to grab coffee or eat lunch together, especially if you can do that even remotely. It can also be bigger things like creating team-based goals. So can you create a goal that your entire team can rally around and plan with? If you're going to be working with a different team, do they know in advance that there are any dependencies so that people can confirm availability? The last thing you want, and I see this all the time, is to create a goal, put it on paper, present it to leadership, and then 6, 8, 12 weeks later, go to another team and say, hey, I need this work done in the next 2 weeks because if it's not done, I'm not going to hit my goal. I have seen both ends of that. It is so frustrating. This probably sounds familiar to a lot of people. So when you plan a goal, can you map out every single potential dependency and go talk to those team leaders before you commit to the goal? Can you say, hey, here's the OKR, here's the KPI, here is my goal. Here's what I'm going to need from you, and here's the timeline. Is this something your team is able to support? Making sure that everyone is on the same page before those commitments are in place helps make sure everyone is aligned, and then you've got their buy-in. So now it's a joint goal. Now they want to support it because they've already bought in. Understand that when one person wins, everybody wins. No teams left behind. We are all working together as one team. So again, we have self-empathy. We figured out exactly what motivates us. We figured out what drives us. We have that spark and that excitement. And we developed team empathy. We're working really collaboratively. We're supporting each other. We're understanding those dependencies in advance, aligning and collaborating on our goals, and we're really here to make sure that we succeed as a team, not as a group of individuals. Next step is customer empathy. It is the last piece of the puzzle. If you're starting with that customer, you're going in the right direction. If you're building a fintech product, for example, you need to understand your customer and their reality, their motivations, their livelihood. Wave, this was really key to the success of understanding that those micro businesses were built with them really thinking that their business was very closely tied to their personal success. So a few really important pieces of insight. Do people have multiple jobs they're struggling? If so, how are you training? How are you enabling with that reality in mind? Also understanding really what their life looks like. So for example, at Loopio, our founders actually used to write RFPs. If you've never written an RFP before, it sucks. There's no other way to say it. It is not fun. It is stressful. You can be coming up against a really tight deadline. They can come in really unexpectedly. If you don't have someone dedicated to write RFPs, you still have your whole world, your whole reality you're trying to accomplish. And all of a sudden, this massive project with huge import, every single line matters. The stress, the anxiety, the frustration, understanding that is key. Not just the problem of I want to solve this, I want to turn around an RFP faster, but understanding the reality of what life looks like when that comes into the customer's world is really, really important so that we can build the right solutions, understanding that this real reality, not just the business outcome. The business outcome is important. So is the reality of the rest of the world. Now, you might be wondering, I'm talking to everyone on Zoom. how do I maintain empathy right now? For a whole bunch of reasons, Zoom fatigue is real. What this means is you're tired. Your customer is tired. Your team is tired. Everyone is a little bit exhausted of all of the Zoom calls. It might be the added strain of looking at yourself for 8 hours a day. It's a lot. It might be the strain of being looked at by others for 8 hours a day. Usually in meetings, you're looking around, you're interacting with different people, your eye line is moving all over the place. You're not just zeroing in and seeing everybody all at once. In this new Zoom world, you are, which means you are being watched all day. It's a lot. It could even be the hidden toll of having people so close to your personal bubble. Your computer's probably not that far away, so people are feeling really, really close. It could be inviting people into your homes. That can be a lot. That can be really overwhelming for some people. So you're talking to people who are exhausted. You're exhausted. How do you maintain empathy in this kind of world? It's a lot. Now is the time to double down on that empathy for ourselves and for others. What does that mean? How do we accomplish this in a Zoom world? It means really, again, being aware. So if you wrap your urgent work early, could you take a break, leave a little bit early? If you're talking to somebody on the phone and they seem stressed, it's a really good question to ask. Do they need to reschedule? Can you book this call for another time? If you're sick of all of the meetings, it might mean prioritizing time for genuinely connecting, having those coffee conversations. One thing I've done a lot of is taking things off of Zoom and actually saying, hey, we need to have this meeting. We don't need our computers. Can we both just take our dogs for a walk and talk on the phone while we do? Really great to physically change your environment. Again, when you were in an office, you were probably, going room to room, getting coffee, getting different things, meeting rooms. Now you're pretty much in one typically smaller room all day. That can be exhausting. Can you change your environment? And can you encourage the person you're speaking to change their environment? Do you need to be looking at each other physically? Is there a chance that by getting off of Zoom and just putting the phone on, that you'll actually have a better, more genuine, deep conversation by getting outside? We're all in Canada. I know it's a little chilly, but bring a sweater, bring a jacket. It's going to be okay. Get outside and go for a walk. It's a really great way to build that empathy. I said it's a Zoom world. Doesn't mean it has to be a Zoom phone call or whatever technology you're using. They're all very similar in terms of that video sharing. How many calls can you actually make? Just regular calls. Conversations are taking on new shape. So you're probably finding that there are new people joining the background of some of those conversations. Again, acknowledging that reality, being aware that you might have children, spouses, pets in the background. I'm not sure if you noticed earlier, but my dog let herself in and out. So you might have noticed the door going. I don't have a ghost, I promise. But really acknowledging that reality and learning to work within that reality. So not just pretending it's business as usual, not pretending that we are in an office building. If there are kids that are joining the call, acknowledging them, sometimes letting them join, it's great. But really, really acknowledging the realities of the situation can be a great way to bring empathy to those calls. And people can be so grateful and appreciative when you acknowledge that reality and are willing to bring in that customer empathy. Now, the last point I want to make is giving back. And that is why I am so excited to be here with this group today. As you learn, share your lessons. As you ramp up, meet others for coffee. If you joined an organization and people were really kind and warm to you, can you do the same for the next person who joins? If you joined an organization and they weren't, can you still go that extra mile to make sure the next person who joins has a better experience. Go to digital meetups, not just to learn, but to share your insights. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep helping others, because this tech community, this entire community, is a beautiful community, and we are building it together. Thank you so much for letting me share a little bit about my journey today. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the conference. I know there's some great content coming, so stay tuned, enjoy the rest of your day, and have fun. Bye, everyone.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sara. That I can't even begin to say how grateful I am for that presentation and for you taking the time. I think we're going to have some questions from the audience, but I wanted to just have a quick conversation with you, because it's been a few years since I last saw you in person. No chocolate chip cookies here, but hey,
Next time.
Yes, exactly. So I love the presentation. And I remember the first time I saw you talk about empathy and tech. I was like, empathy and tech and people and tech? Because we always talk about tech, but we always separate everything. And I remember some time ago when I went to the Singularity conference, there was one of the doctors, and she was talking about how our inventions in robotics in terms of IoT and AI, how they can actually adopt our personality, and it's through what we put into the system. And for years I thought about that, but then listening to you again, I'm like, yes, that makes sense. So I'd love to learn more about, your talk when you say setting yourself up for success. And then I really love the idea about a notebook, keeping a notebook, because we all love that journal thing. So if we can talk about that for a bit, I would really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So yes, empathy is so, so important. We always hear about what kind of development technology you should be using, what kind of software you should be purchasing. But it's rare that we actually talk about empathy, and even more rare, which is frustrating, is talking about empathy for yourself. Sometimes I hear about starting with the customer, which is great. Being customer-centric is really important. Sometimes I hear about working collaboratively and how that's important, but almost nobody talks about taking care of yourself. And if this year has taught us anything, it is that taking care of yourself and layering in that empathy first is so, so important. And I think it's all about being aware of how you work best. So setting yourself up for success does not mean being really harsh on yourself. A lot of people think, okay, I want to set myself up for success. I need to be perfect. Let's make sure I never eat junk food. I go to bed at the perfect time every single night. I'm the best boss, the best leader, the best employee. And that's how I set myself up for success, right? Mm-hmm. Wrong. That is not sustainable. That is not realistic. But there are lots of ways that you can kind of use habits and hack your way to setting yourself up for success. So I'll give you a really real example. I know I happen to be a morning person, which means you're lucky this is morning time, so you have me and I'm full of energy. But at the afternoon, when people try to book meetings with me and they're like, hey, can I run some numbers by you? And it's 5:00. I'm like, you want me to do math at 5? No, this is a morning conversation, because that's when I'm really sharp and really energetic. Or even really basic things you can do. So I used to walk from my office to Union Station. Hopefully a few people are kind of familiar with the route to Union Station in downtown Toronto. I would specifically take a route that didn't take me through the main concourse, because I don't know if anyone's been there lately, but there is so much delicious food. Starbucks, like lemon loaf and cranberry bliss bars and booster juice, and I want all of it. So I would know, hey, do I need to rely on my willpower to not go get that snack? No, I can hack it and set myself up for success by taking a different route where I'm not walking past a bunch of delicious treats. So big believer in setting yourself up for success. And the notebooks, it's so funny you ask. I always have physical notebooks. There are lots of studies that say things are actually mentally reinforced when you write instead of typing. But especially if you're trying to be creative and think of, how do I actually feel? There's kind of a disconnect when you're talking about how do I feel emotionally, and you're sitting here on a computer trying to type out how you feel. Especially if you're trying to be aware of your body. So what signals is your body sending? How can I know when I'm really tense and anxious and that's frustrating for me? You're sitting at your computer, you're typing, you're in a chair. It's hard to know when you feel tense because your whole body feels tense all day because of the technology you're using. Whereas if you have a notebook you happen to like, I also love pretty notebooks. That's just me, but a little extra joy comes to my day from using a really pretty notebook. It means you can go get comfortable and then there's no tension coming because of how you're sitting, and you can be more aware of how you actually feel as you're jotting things down.
Makes sense. That makes sense because I know personally I'm a creative person and I enjoy writing, and calligraphy, it's the flow of the pen and the ink paper. It's not just hearing the pen scratching the paper, but I don't know what it is. It's like you're putting your emotion into the paper as you go along with the flow. But then having a notebook to actually go back and look at something after, like even the end of the day or a couple of days later, it's sort of a concrete reinforcement of your thought at the time. And then also your emotion at the time. Because you can type something, as you said, true, because when you're typing, you're hunched over. It's like, but then when you're writing, you tend to either relax back. Even if you bend over, there is a continuous flow to it. So there's emotion to it. And I think, the way our brain's wired, it's pen to paper and thought to paper at the same time. So I can really understand that. And that when you don't think about it, you just do it. It's automatic. It's like being on autopilot. You don't really, immerse yourself into that part of conversation. But yeah, definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Love that. Mm-hmm.
If you want to see something fun, look at your handwriting on the page where you're writing everything you're frustrated about.
Yes.
And then look at your handwriting on the page where you're writing all the things that energize you, and see, there might be real tangible differences. Like, is that pen really pressing into the paper when you're frustrated? Maybe.
True. Yeah, I never thought about that. I'm going to let Aldine interrupt us if there's questions, but I'm going to keep talking about it. But I love one thing you said about knowing yourself. Like, how do you get to know yourself, especially now during COVID? And we're like, there's so much going on and you have so many things that you're worried about that we forget what self-care is. We forget to think about ourselves because we're so preoccupied with everyone else around us, including our jobs and our families. We, like women especially, they tend to take a back seat to themselves, and if that even makes any sense to everyone. But I know I can think about everything and do everything for everyone else, and it's like at the end of the day, you have a nice cup of tea and you're like, what did I do for myself today? Absolutely nothing.
Yep, 100%. Women don't tend to prioritize self-care, and you never will find out good insights about yourself accidentally. So every single person who's like, I've been stuck with me for 30 plus years, however many years, I know me. We're good. There are so many things you can still learn about yourself by really being intentional about that process of self-discovery. And a perfect example is understanding that frustration and that tension. A lot of people will end up with a headache. I am guilty of this as well at the end of the day. And you go downstairs, you make that cup of tea and you're like, oh, I have a really bad headache. And you don't realize it's because you've been tense and frustrated all day because you're not aware of those self signals. Actually understanding your body. So a really simple exercise. Where do you feel your tension? For some people, it's in your neck. For some people, it's your hands. So clenching your hands. For some people, it's in your stomach or your back. But that at a very simple level, where in your body do you feel your tension first? is a great signal, because then suddenly, for me, a lot of the time it's my hands. So anytime, if you want to look how I felt during a photo, look at my hands. If I'm frustrated or stressed, sometimes taking photos, you get a little nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nervous getting my photo taken. My hands are always clenched up. And so now I know, hey, my hands seem to be clenching. I must be stressed, because your brain doesn't always know before your body does. Sometimes your body knows first.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you know, you can prioritize that self-care. So, hey, yes, I have back-to-back meetings. I have, a spouse or a child I could be taking care of. But now all of a sudden I realize my hands are clenched. Okay, I have 20 minutes between meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go throw in a load of laundry, but instead I'm going to make myself that cup of tea or go around the block, or just take 5 minutes and journal, because I can recognize in my body this tension before my brain has caught up and realized that I'm stressed out. A lot of the time your body figures it out before your brain does.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think we need to listen to our body and listen to our mind, because we, you do self-affirmations, but the self-talk, that's another thing we always talk about, self-talk. But I really liked one of the points that you mentioned about, I've lived with myself for so long, so I know about me. And yesterday, we had a great group. They were talking about the imposter syndrome. And people were saying that, you know what? Guess what? Women don't tend to apply for roles unless they're completely sure they're 100% perfect for that role. But otherwise, men will say, you know what? Hey, I've got this, and this. I can do this. I'm going to apply. And one of the ladies, she really brought up a really amazing point yesterday. And she was saying that, one of the roles that she had applied for, guess what? It's like she would have never applied for that role if someone did not approach her. And the person asked her, why wouldn't you? You're more than qualified. And she's like, well, I didn't think I was completely qualified. And she's like, have you looked at your resume? And she's like, of course, it's my resume. I've lived with it for so long. It's like, okay, go back and look at it again. Because we tend to not see what we see. Others can see it. But for some reason, we actually don't see everything that others see. And I think that's, I know I'm guilty of it many times. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are guilty, and they're like, have you looked at your accomplishment? I'm like, nah, yeah, whatever. But, to your point, Sarah, like, even we had that conversation when we first met, and we talked about this, and we talked about team empathy and, customer empathy, but empathy for ourselves. I think we don't know how to address empathy for ourselves. Like, if you can even, elaborate on that. But I loved one of the things that you talked about, having the spark and compromising the spark. If we can talk about that, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Empathy for the self, I've said it before, one of the best ways to be really empathetic to others is to be kind to yourself first. Mm-hmm. If you are frustrated, if you are running on empty, and you keep giving and giving and giving, eventually you're going to snap. Eventually you're going to be giving bad advice. You're going to be short with people. You're going to be frustrated with people. It's hard, but finding that spark is one of the ways to make sure that you really are being kind to yourself. I know, I hear this all the time from people. Work is work. It's not supposed to be fun.
Yes.
And yes, you're not going somewhere, and if your job is like cake taster, I'm very jealous. Please email me. I have questions. But most of us are still encountering challenges every day. Mm-hmm. And you might have challenges. You might have even conflict with a new coworker, someone new on your team, something new in your life. Everything is not going to be perfect and simple and easy. And you know what? That's okay. Because for a lot of people, easy is boring. That is its own form of downfall, but finding things you're excited about. So, for example, I've been at my company for 5 years. I'm so really excited every day because I love our customers. I love the challenges that they're facing and being able to really help them. I've been very fortunate that I get to surround myself by people who I genuinely adore. all of this helps me feel that spark, so that excitement every day. It's funny, I used to walk into the office and I'd pass people and they'd be like walking and with head down, and you could tell they were really grumpy. And I was always so excited to go tackle the challenges and see my friends at work, be walking along. I'm ready to go. And people would look at me like, who is this girl? What is happening? Finding those things you're excited about is important. And a part of that is just the story you're telling in your head. So you could have a big challenge. Really great example. Customer success is all about making your customers successful, but keeping those customers is a priority. In the middle of a pandemic, there are a lot of businesses that are really struggling. So some people would come into work and say, oh my gosh, it's going to be another hard day. I'm going to have a bunch of challenges. I'm going to have some really difficult conversations, and I'm so tired. And some people would come into work and say, okay, over the next 6 months, I'm going to challenge myself in ways I have never challenged myself before. I am going to grow more in the next 6 months than I have in probably the last 2 years, and than I will ever have the opportunity to do again. And by being in this industry right now, I will be leagues ahead of anybody who joins a year or two from now, because I have come in through this challenge. And I am going to help some people in a really cool, creative way. 2 people in the exact same scenario. It's been a hard year, but that story that you're telling yourself can help to reinforce that spark and reinforce that energy and that self-empathy. So empathy is not just about finding the perfect situation. It's also about recognizing some of those positives and leaning into them.
Awesome advice. Awesome advice. And like, I think maybe the question could be, I know for one thing I'm going to ask you about before we end the conversations about burnout, because I know I am very guilty of that. I will keep going until it's like, okay, time to drop dead kind of thing. It's like, that's it. I'm like done. And your body tells you, that's it. So, we do have a question from the audience, so I'm not going to hog up your time. Okay. So question is, how does one be empathetic to oneself while you're stuck in the job until you can find another one where they can regain their spark?
I love this question because you're acknowledging 2 things. One, I am not in the scenario right now that is ultimately going to make me as happy as I know I can be, and I know I can be happier. And I love that positive outset. Like, that in and of itself is an amazing thing to recognize. And 2, I'm not stuck being miserable or being really deflated and really demotivated while I'm in this situation. So 2 amazing realities suddenly were surfaced through this one really basic question, which I love. So thank you, Angela. Amazing question. For me, it's really about both of those things. So first off, you're in this situation right now. You're probably not going to leave until or for your friends. So you're not going to leave this situation without a backup, and that's okay. It's a really responsible decision. But how can your friend find those positives? So again, what are the things that I am excited about? What are the things that are stressing me out that are going to help me in my next job? So what are the challenges today that I'm facing? That are draining, demotivating, but they are going to teach me something that I would not have otherwise learned. Even if, real example, I've heard from lots of people, you're really unhappy with the management. Things are bombing. Okay, fantastic. You now know exactly what you don't want in your next job. Start making a list. Start coming up with interview questions. And then it feels productive and it feels positive. Because, someone comes to you and they're like, hey, I need you to work Saturday again. Sorry, we can't pay overtime. You're like, okay, great. This is another thing from my list. I have another really tangible question, and I know exactly what I want to avoid. So again, use it as a resource to level yourself up and know exactly what you want to avoid. And when you can change that narrative and start to say, okay, this is why this is productive. This is why this stress is worth it in the end, because it's going to take me to this new place. And this is how I'm using this to self-identify challenges. That is how you can really turn that negative situation into more of a positive situation, because you're taking action and you're changing the story in your head. But the other pieces, of course, you got to take that action. So write that list of interview questions, change up your resume to make sure it really addresses what you want, write that pro-con list of things you want in your next role. And then, Mel, to your question earlier, so many women end up not applying for jobs. Have a little more faith in yourself. I see this all the time. Do not wait until you check every single box on that list, because I consistently, as a hiring manager, I get to see hundreds and hundreds of resumes. And typically I'll say, hey, I want 5 years experience for this role. And then we'll apply and say, well, I have 6 months. So seems good enough. And women will say, well, I have 4.5. So I don't think I'm quite there yet.
Yes.
Apply, take on those challenges, make sure that you are getting yourself out there and continuing to be persistent. And anytime you interview, if you don't get the role, ask for feedback. I would say about half of the companies today are willing to offer feedback. The more you can learn, again, turn it into a positive, use it as a learning experience and say, okay, fantastic. I just learned 3 things that are going to help me nail my next interview.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really amazing feedback on that, because like I said, I know personally I've been guilty of it in the past, but I think that's where mentoring comes in, which is really important. There's an opportunity at some of these interviews or some of these companies where you see, an opportunity that you're applying for, that you're saying to yourself, okay, this is really good. I would love to do something here, and I think I can do really well in this role. How can you help me to get into this role? What do I need to do to get into this role? These are maybe some of the questions that some interviewers, they're open to that in terms of sponsorship. We talk about allyship, we talk about mentoring, but mentoring and sponsoring, taking the next level from mentoring, I always say that is to go into sponsorship. That way you're able to take somebody on and then really bring them into that conversation and give them an opportunity to do something with themselves. So those are the really key things that we're looking at.
Absolutely. I think all phenomenal points, like making sure that you are allied with someone, asking those questions, forming those relationships early. If you have a dream company, can you reach out to someone now before you're ready to move and start forming a few of those relationships? All great strategies.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, because I love, Sarah, that you brought on that point, because a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but I've heard right now where people say, you know what, I really wanted to apply for that role, and the person that got it is because they knew somebody inside. It's not necessarily because they knew somebody inside, it's because they were already grooming themselves to apply for that role, or grooming themselves to get into that, so that they would be, they have a good opportunity, or they would learn. It's a first-hand opportunity to learn more about that company and that environment before you step into it. Because, I remember hearing, oh my God, I can't tell you many years ago, they say, what do you know about our company? When you're going for an interview, you're like, what I've learned on the internet. But then by speaking to somebody internally, you get to learn a little bit more. So maybe, I know we're running out of time, but I'd love to get your take on that approach.
I love it. I recommend it to everybody. And there's 2 big benefits. So 1, you're somewhere you're not happy right now, hypothetically.
Yeah.
You don't want to be somewhere you're not happy again. Starting that conversation really early actually gives you not just the leg up in the conversation, but it lets you do a little research. If you spend 6 months forming an early relationship with somebody, there's a chance they're going to start to really share. You're going to learn a lot about that business. You're going to form that relationship. And by the time a job opens up, you're going to be like, oh my, no, this is not for me. And that's okay. That again, you didn't just waste 6 months. You prevented yourself from having to join an organization where it wasn't a fit and you weren't ultimately going to be successful or happy. Yeah. But also by forming those relationships really early on, you are going to know so much. So to your point about those interview questions, what do you know about our organization? if you can form one of those relationships and say, hey, I know you're not hiring. I'm really inspired by what you do. I was wondering if you'd be open to an informal mentorship where maybe every other month we touch base for 30 minutes. I have some really tangible questions for you, making sure that you are prepared, making sure that your ask is really clear, making sure that you're saying, I know you're not hiring. I'm not trying to get a job right now. I just want to learn from you. All of those things will help set you up so that 6 months down the line, if there is a job, you can nail that interview because you know everything, or you're not even applying for the interview because you've actually self-selected it out and you're refocusing your attention somewhere else.
Perfect. And then, so I know we have a few more minutes. I'm not sure, Aldine, if we have any questions before I ask my next questions. Like I said, I don't want to take up all the time, but there's one more question. Okay, so how can immigrants benefit from informal networking? So do you have any tips?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn is definitely the place to start. Don't send blind messages. Have something in your body. So don't just send people a LinkedIn request and hope that they will accept and you'll form a relationship. Have some body, but also be respectful of their time and have a really clear ask. So very simple tip. Never say, can we talk this week? People are really busy. Say, hey, I know this week's probably already booked up, but can we chat in the coming weeks? That in and of it, recognizing how busy they are. And also put an agenda in there. Say, I'm really curious to learn these 3 things. So I saw you've grown from this to this. I'm really curious to know how I can replicate that. I'm also looking to learn more about the company and the culture, not just from an interview perspective, but the reason I really care is the place I'm at now. This is what I'm experiencing. I'd love to find a company that enables this. Make it really, really tangible and have some body copy in there. Not everyone's going to reply, but a lot of people will. So be okay. Don't spend, 3 hours on one message. Send maybe 5-10 messages out and know that if you get 2 or 3 back, that's a huge win.
Well, that's awesome. That's a really good point because I know personally, and I'm sure you do as well, I get a ton of requests on LinkedIn to connect. And some are very impersonal. It's just said, I'd like to connect. And you're like, why would you like to connect with me? Or someone will connect and immediately like, can we meet? Or it's like, okay, yes. And, sometimes people are upset. I always say when I reply back, sometimes it's like almost a week later, which I say, I'm so sorry. It took a while for me to get back to you, but, it's not that I'm ignoring you. It's just that in my inbox, you get like 100 emails or hundreds of emails in a day. Same thing with phone calls, and it's the same thing. So it's not that that person is trying to ignore you. It's because if you look at it, you have an ask to them and probably exponentially, maybe 10 times 10 times 10 more people are asking them that same question. So it's just really to, as you said, be clear. If you want to say, I'm open to mentorship or I'd like to get more information on doing this, is there something that, or maybe someone you want to be connected to that's in their network? That's always another ask as well, too, that we find on LinkedIn that tends to go a long way. So definitely. So I would love to, I know it's 10:30. We're getting ready for our next presenter, but Sara, is there any last parting remarks with our Choose to Challenge this year, that you can leave with us?
So I would say my last parting remark is there's so much amazing content here today. If you can do one thing, you're going to be inspired, you're going to be energized, and then the weekend's going to come. And guess what? You're going to be busy again starting on Monday. The train doesn't stop rolling. Yeah. So again, get that notebook out, pen and paper, super old school, and write down 2 things you want to do differently. And then set a calendar reminder for 2 weeks from now and then 2 weeks from then, and check in on yourself. Are you doing those 2 things? So set just 2 ideas. There's been hundreds shared, but 2 ideas, and then hold yourself accountable and see what you can accomplish in 2 weeks and 4 weeks.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. And we'll talk again soon. So yes, and we still have some things to talk about, of course, my project with you. So looking forward to that, and have yourself an amazing, amazing rest of the day and weekend, and we'll talk soon. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye. So that was Sara Masson from Loopio. She is, like I said, awesome individual, and we've had her participate with some of our startup weekends. And not just like, I love the company Loopio. I love the things that they put forth and how they support their actual workers. So all their employees, you can't even call them workers per se. It's something that when you talk about tech, and I know Sara mentioned it earlier about tech and empathy and people. So people are the driving force behind tech. Technology is something that you have, but people are the driving force. And we covered that in so many points yesterday with that. And we talked about cybersecurity. We talked about so many additional points yesterday. So if you missed yesterday's the first, or day one, I should say, we will be posting them live, and we'll share the links with everyone else that's registered. So in the case that you may have missed some of the other event, while we wait for Jackie, Jackie Porter, an incredible financial guru. I met Jackie years ago, and there she is peeking into the lens. So Jackie, I can see you. Incredible. Hello, incredible woman. We met, like I said, years ago, and we've continued this relationship because she empowers women to think beyond the scope of financial literacy, beyond the scope of where you want to be years from now in finance. So I'm going to leave Jackie to you right now, and she's just going to talk about choose to challenge your mindset around money. So welcome, Jackie.
Hi there. I'm excited, as I said, to talk to you about, Women's Day and choosing to challenge your mindset around building wealth. I feel really good that, women have come a long way over the last 100 years. However, despite all the gains that we've made, women still really report not feeling confident when it comes to making decisions around money, especially, female baby boomers. And that's a shame because, there's so much at stake for women, especially for women in this demographic. Unfortunately, really, even though it's 2021, we still have a long way to go. Most of you know we still haven't achieved pay equity. We still live 4 years longer than men, with a pension plan that doesn't even factor in our age difference. And if it's become glaringly clear, especially in the pandemic, we're still doing most of the unpaid work. In fact, a number of gains that women have made over the last 100 years are currently under threat. And I'm sure some of your former speakers have talked about it, but a number of the gains that we've made are currently under threat due to caregiving demands placed on us during the pandemic. However, I feel very strongly that the greatest threat to a woman's long-term financial health is actually just not making financial literacy a priority. In a book I wrote a few years ago called Single by Choice or Chance, the research that I uncovered suggested that women who expected to manage their finances on their own actually did better and had better financial outcomes compared to women who didn't. So women, now's the time to focus on improving your financial IQ for the benefit of your long-term financial health. So women control 32% of the world's wealth. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the strides that women have made and basically celebrate that, because I think one of the ways we can improve our confidence is to celebrate some of the strides that we have made. So that's the first thing. Women have actually gotten to the point where we are controlling 32% of the world's wealth, or 72 trillion. Think about that, ladies. 72 trillion globally. The other thing we should be proud of is 44% of women have grown their wealth independently as entrepreneurs. So just let that sink in. 44% of women have grown their wealth independently as entrepreneurs. And that's really important for the startup community to know, is there's a growing group of entrepreneurs who are growing their wealth independently, especially the younger millennials. The other thing that you should know is 50% of women have created their own wealth this way. The other thing you should know is that boomers, on the other hand, have likely created their wealth due to inheritance. So that's another really interesting stat, is that women are actually creating their wealth independently as entrepreneurs. So as we talk through, the state of women's wealth, these are some really interesting stats. We talked about the fact that, currently, because women are really making so many gains, obtaining wealth, one of the things we have to be careful of is now is the time, ladies, and this is why it's important, is over the next decade, we are looking at, because inheritance is one of the ways that we're growing wealth. And over the next decade, we're going to see that many more women are going to obtain wealth through inheritance from their parents, from their grandparents, through a divorce. So ladies, this is why it's important, because we're going through over the next decade one of the largest wealth transfers that our actual generation has ever seen. We'll see trillions pass to the next generation. So ask yourself, if you were to inherit a significant amount of wealth, would you be able to manage it? I don't know why I'm not able to change screens, but anyway. Oh, I think it's working now. All right. So now let's talk about where the wealthiest women are located. And this might not surprise you, especially when you do the math on our exchange rate, right? The US actually accounts for the largest share of wealthy women. And the good news, again, is millennial women in the US as well are increasingly asserting themselves in the household when it comes to making financially related decisions. So I have a question for you. How involved are you in making decisions in your own household? I'd love to know. You can definitely post in the chat. How involved are you in making financial decisions in your own household? And I'd love to know, yes or no, would you like to be more involved? So how involved are you in the decisions of the household? Are you involved? Yes, no. And I'd also like to know if you'd like to be more involved. But the millennials are asserting themselves, and the wealthiest women are, not surprisingly, located in the US. So now let's talk about how women define their wealth, because we do not have the same definition as men, ladies. Women define their wealth as having financial security, feeling financially prepared for the future, including retirement, and feeling that they're in a position to take care of themselves without having to rely on others. Finally, women define their wealth as having significant net worth. So women define their wealth as, having a significant amount of net worth to rely on. Unfortunately, though, many women aren't where they want to be as far as, having a significant net worth and feeling confident around building it. In fact, the research suggests that women don't feel confident they'll be in a position to create their own wealth. And ladies, again, that's a shame. So the question I have for all of you is, are you one of them? Women are reporting not earning enough. One of the reasons is they're reporting not earning enough to reach their financial goals, and consequently not being able to save enough for retirement or for emergencies. Now, keep in mind that in 2020, women still only earn 81 cents for every dollar earned by men. The biggest hurdle actually for women is, however, as we mentioned, is not being prepared to manage their finances on their own based on having this longer life expectancy. I talked about 4 years. It's actually women live to age 84 versus men living to around age 80. And in my book, Single by Choice or Chance, as I mentioned, I discovered that women who became suddenly single by chance due to divorce or death of a partner actually suffered greater financial consequences than women who actually expected to manage their finances as a single person at some point. But again, the good news is it doesn't have to be this way. Today is the day you can make a decision that you want to build wealth and take charge of your finances. The key is to decide that you want to actually make wealth building a priority. And so, the younger generations actually feel, as I mentioned, more confident. Women want to actually build their financial confidence in a few different ways, making more money to save for their financial goals, having enough money for retirement, budgeting for emergencies. And again, as I mentioned, these women feel that they're better prepared. They want to feel that they're going to be better prepared to manage finances on their own, which is crucial. So who am I? Why do I care so much? I mentioned I'm biased. I started this whole presentation saying, look at me, I am biased about women's financial wealth. But I want to go a little bit deeper so that you understand why I am so passionate about financial independence for women. And for you to understand truly, you need to know who I am. And I don't mean the person on the screen with, this background, in terms of, having industry experience and being featured a bunch of different places, writing a book on the subject. This is all great. But to truly, you need to understand, why I'm so passionate. You really need to know where I'm coming from. You need to understand this person. And this person was the person who, and some of you out there might relate to her, because I was raised by a single mom who always taught me never rely on a man, to always have my own money. And my mother really embodied this. My mother was an immigrant woman who worked 3 jobs and I'm sure some of you can relate to that too, if you're someone who was raised by a single mom or an immigrant mom. She worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our head, to put food on the table. And I have to tell you, back then, child labor laws are not what they are now. So what that often meant, whatever my mother was doing, I was pretty much doing it as well. So she did a bunch of things. She catered. She sold Tupperware, and I'm totally dating myself for those of you who remember Tupperware. She worked as an usher, and she also worked full-time as well. But I have to tell you as well, her work ethic truly inspired me growing up. She gave me a ton of confidence at a really young age. I, remember doing things like making my own lunch at 7, taking a plane on my own when I was 13. But unfortunately, at the age of 16, my mother passed away, and I suddenly became single myself. What that meant was really very quickly, I was forced to make a lot of adult decisions. I needed to figure out how I was going to live, how I was going to continue to go to school. This meant actually living with roommates, working a number of jobs myself to finish high school and university. What I remember most about that time is, as I was going through this really difficult period of my life, I found it odd that other people often came to me for advice. They saw me living on my own at such an early age, and they thought I knew something. But the truth is, I only knew how to survive, something I was grateful I learned from my mother. It was really many, many years later, after graduating from university, getting my first full-time job, and then being downsized, that my life really changed. At first, my full-time job, when I got my first job, I maxed out all the programs, the savings programs that were offered to me, because after so many years on my own, I was really, really good at saving money. At that time, over that time period, over the 5 years I worked, I managed to accumulate quite a bit that way. And then shortly after, I was downsized. And at that point, I wasn't really sure what to do with some of the investments I had built up while I was working at this first full-time job. A friend of mine referred me to an advisor, and it was the first time I heard of the profession. So she referred me to a female advisor, and that was really rare at that time. She was the very first person on earth I ever had a money conversation with, and it started with a very, very powerful message. And that message was, money could work for me instead of just working for money. And for someone like myself, who at that point had worked 3 jobs for so many years, it actually captivated me. actually became a game changer for me. And it's when I decided I wanted to join the profession. I wanted to learn everything I could about how I could make money work for me, as you can imagine. And that led me to a journey of building my own 7-figure net worth. And as I started to understand just how powerful understanding money really was, I thought of all the people like me who never had a money conversation with anyone. Certainly, this woman was the very first money conversation I ever had. And I thought about what a difference it made in my life. And I'm really grateful to be with you today to have a money conversation with you, because I do know what that impact really, really means. So let's have a money conversation together, and let's talk about some of these tips to really strengthen your ability to build wealth and improve your mindset and confidence when it comes to building wealth for yourself, because you can decide today that you don't need to wait for anyone to build your wealth. So now let's talk about a few different strategies that we can really employ to build wealth. The first is we started to talk about mindset, and that's one of the biggest, I would say, game changers around wealth building is changing your mindset, changing your mind around money. The other thing we're going to talk about is taking control of your cash flow before it takes control of you, getting rid of bad debt for good. We're going to talk about saving, investing, the power of leveraging, and building multiple income streams. So because we've had some technical challenges, let's get right into it. So talking a little bit more about mindset, here are some money myths and here are some money truths, because creating a positive mindset is really thinking about what's getting in the way. What's getting in the way of your ability to build wealth and to attract the wealth you deserve? A part of it is believing it is something you deserve. How many of the women that are here and men are familiar with some of these money myths? How are these myths undermining the wealth that is actually waiting for you? Because at the end of the day, there are a number of realities women have to grapple with when it comes to their finances. So I'm going to talk quickly about the money myths, but let's also be fully aware of the money truths. Some money myths that I grew up with, and maybe some of you can relate to, is money is the root of all evil. Money comes and money goes. Anybody here, rich people are greedy? Anyway, here are some real truths that we have to, as women, grapple with as we contemplate building our wealth. Women earn less. As I said, only 81 cents on the dollar. We live 4 years longer. We spend a number of our years when we're earning less caregiving. And one of the stats that shocked me when I wrote Single by Choice or Chance is after a divorce, especially with children, we're much more likely to end up in poverty. So just some real money truths we really need to contend with as we contemplate building our wealth. So I don't know if you realize this, because when we're talking about mindset and making the decision to become an empowered, wealthy woman, recognize you're in a relationship with money. All of us are, whether we realize it or not. Is money your friend? Is money your foe? We were talking about some of these money myths. Is money your frenemy? So what's the relationship? Because in your subconscious mind, whether you realize it or not, depending on how you see money, that's the relationship you build with money in the world. So my mantra, because I'm going to talk about a few of my mantras, is I love money and money loves me. And I say this to myself all the time. Usually when I'm brushing my teeth in front of the mirror, I say, I love money and money loves me, because if you decide, ladies, that you don't love money, then it won't love you back. So to nurture a positive relationship with money, we need to set some goals, right? So what will you need to do in the next 1, 3, and 5 years to meet your goals? What do you want to focus on when it comes to becoming wealthy? Because now's the time to take responsibility for the future you want to have. And you want to write down the goals you want to achieve in detail. So for example, is it getting out of debt? Because if it's getting out of debt, you'll need to do the math to just see how much debt you're in. And then create a plan to ensure that debt is paid off based on your deadline. Also, what are you you doing well when it comes to your finances? Are you a good saver? How can that help you to meet your goals? Also, don't forget to emphasize the positive, ladies, because whatever you're doing well, you want to like double down on that. But also think through where you might need help, because understanding money is something you're going to need to lean into over the course of your life. And I say this as a person who's constantly writing and speaking about money. I'm actually learning about money management and understanding money through a pandemic, as we all are. And writing and speaking about it has, again, helped me to illuminate my knowledge on that. So just consider yourself, decide that you're going to become a lifelong learner about money, and that just makes the journey a lot easier. So number 2, we talked about number 1. Number 2 is, first, number 1 was set some priorities. 2, lean in your numbers. Lean into your numbers. If you don't know your money story, who will? My experience as a planner has taught me, actually, no matter how complicated my client's story is, they understand it. In the first couple of meetings, they just want to make sure I understand their money story as well. So the key after understanding your money story is leaning into your numbers, because you need to understand if your money story, what you want to see happen, lines up with what your actual state of the financial union is. So what is your net worth? And your ladies out there, I'd love for you to put in the chat, what does net worth mean? Net worth is, so please feel free to put it in the chat. So what's your net worth? How much debt are you in? Do you have a spending plan that identifies how much you're going to spend over the next 12 months? If you don't, take a closer look at where your money is going. And that might mean looking at your income statements, all the income you have coming in, all of your financial statements. So look at your credit card statements, your bank statements, how much money came into the account, how much money went out. Often we just simply add and subtract. We add, we look at how much money comes in. Sometimes money comes out. It slips through our fingers. We're not paying attention to it. So look closely, add up all the income that comes in each month, subtract your expenses to see if you have money left over, if you're short, because if you're short, chances are it's going to go on your credit cards. So see what's happening with your money. And then decide where you want the money to go. If you find that you are in a negative net worth, where can you cut back? Where can you make changes? And that's where setting goals really comes in. Plan to spend less. So number 3, after setting some goals, doing the math, it's plan to spend less on your lifestyle. So here's a sample net worth statement. We were just talking about net worth. So net worth, in case for those people in the chat who put it in, net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. Your assets minus your liabilities will lead you to, if you have more assets than you do liabilities, you have a positive net worth. If you have less assets than you do liabilities, you have a negative net worth. And the key is, how can you build more of a positive net worth? You need to attract more assets. You need to build more savings. But a part of doing that is understanding your net worth. So now we're on to number 3, which is planning to spend less on your lifestyle. We were just starting to talk about planning to spend less on your lifestyle. One of my other mantras is, if you don't have a plan for your money, so if you don't have a plan for your money, guess what? Your money's going to have a plan for you. So that's why it's so important to set aside cash for the future and ensure, again, that money doesn't slip through your fingers as you're earning it. Remember that adding and subtracting, not taking your money or paycheck for granted. Make sure money's not slipping through your fingers. Make sure your money is working as hard as you do. How many of you are familiar, and this is something you can post in the chat as well, how many of you are familiar with the expression lazy money? So lazy money just simply means money is languishing in your savings account. And what we should know, ladies, is women tend to be more savers than investors. But if you're wanting to put your money to work, your emergency fund to work, check out websites like Rate Hub to get the best rates on emergency money. So money you're setting aside for emergencies that you might need at any point. And we know how important your emergency funds have become during the pandemic. So it's ratehub.com, RATEHOUB.com. And you can check out places where you can make money on your short-term savings. So prioritize saving for your future. That's going to come sooner than you think. pay attention to where your money is going, and really stay on top of lazy money that's just lying around collecting dust. Now, let's talk about some ways you can do that if you're trying to track where your money is going after you set a budget, decide where you wanted your money to go. These are some budgeting hacks I recommend. Tracking your expenses on a spreadsheet. Remember those? How many of you in the audience, you can just say yes if you track your expenses on a spreadsheet, or if you're kicking it old school, you're using an envelope method where you're putting money for your discretionary expenses. So money that you don't need for fixed expenses, some of your discretionary expenses like shopping, like maybe clothes shopping or toy shopping, buying stuff for, stuff that you like, fun stuff, entertainment, putting it in an envelope, that's putting that cash in an envelope. That's the envelope method. That goes way back, but that's another one that people use. And then there's a bunch of budget apps. YNAB is You Need a Budget, and Mint are ways you can track your expenses using an app to sort of stay on top of, what's actually happening in your bank accounts and making you see a little bit more closely where your money is going. All of these are great. It just really depends on what you think is going to work, what you're going to stick to. I recently did an article on the top budget apps. I just recently did this based on 2020. And so if you're interested, just message me and I'll send you also, if you're interested in apps, what are the top budget apps for 2020. But again, whatever you think will work, that's the one you do. Here is a sample cash flow statement for those of you who may not be as familiar with cash flow statements. It's just income, expenses, and I can send a copy for those of you who are interested. I can send you a copy of your own cash flow statement so you can start working on your budget, working on your cash flow and paying attention. A quick way to think about your cash flow is something I call the 3 C's of cash flow. Going back to not taking your paycheck for granted. How you can do that first and foremost is capitalize on the cash you have. Capitalizing on cash is just breaking the cycle of money coming in and money going out of your pocket, passing through your hands, making sure that your lazy money is being put to work, in a high interest account. So just really making sure you're treating your money like other employees, right? Treat your money as employees. Again, a Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad term. Put your money to work, even your money that you need for emergencies. That's how you capitalize on some of the cash you have. Cash management is all about paying attention to how you're managing your money, where your money is going. We were talking about using a budget, some sort of budget software or envelope method, but it's all about tracking where your money is going. So make the most of your lazy money, track where your money is going, set a budget. And then finally, I'm going to talk about credit management. And credit management is all about protecting and paying attention to your credit score. Keep in mind, your credit score is your financial reputation. So protecting it and paying attention to your credit score is essential if you want to have access to something I call OPM, also known as other people's money. So you can't get a mortgage, you can't get an RSP loan, or even an investment loan without OPM. These days, you can't even rent an apartment or get accepted for certain jobs. Certainly my job, without good credit, I can't be a financial planner. So just be prepared to protect your credit score with everything that you have. Pay attention to it because it's a gateway to OPM, other people's money, and building wealth quickly. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But are you guys all down with OPM? Again, I'm dating myself. I'm going back a few years if you guys are familiar with that term. Anyway, to empower your credit IQ, here are some factors that go into credit. Does anybody out there know what a minimum credit score is for you to borrow? I'm going to get you to post that in the chat. If you know what a good credit score is, what's a good credit score? Sorry, a minimum credit score that you need to borrow. You can just post that in the chat. But while I wait for people to do that, I'm just going to quickly talk about the factors. You can see them on my PowerPoint. These are some of the factors that affect credit. The 2 biggest are being able to pay your bills on time and not maxing out all of your credit. Length of credit history, new credit, the different types of credit you have are all important. But the 2 most important is paying your credit on time, so paying back your debtors on time and not maxing all the credit that you have. So just be really, really careful about that. Also be careful to check your credit score on a regular basis to make sure you haven't had fraud happen and to make sure that you're staying on top of what your score says. Again, your credit is your reputation. But if you want to check your score on a regular basis for free, check out Credit Karma and Borrowwell. You can go on those websites, register, and they'll push your credit score to you, typically on a monthly basis. But to go back to the credit question, the minimum score you can get before a bank will even look at you for a loan, and this is important, ladies, especially for those of you who own businesses and are trying to access more credit to build your business, the minimum score you can have is 650. And how many, again, in the chat, how many of you know what your credit score is? Just say yes in the chat. Number 6, be mindful of the amount of interest that you pay. So this is really crucial. How many of you know how much your credit card interest is? Do you know what the average credit score interest is? Do you know what you're paying for your mortgage interest? Do you know what you're paying for any other debt that you have? Take a look and make sure you're paying as little interest as possible, because the higher you're paying, the longer it's going to take you to pay that debt off. And the truth is, wouldn't you prefer to be earning double digits on your investments instead of paying this to creditors? Because the average interest rate on a credit card is about 20%. That's what you want to earn on an investment, right? So really aim to pay as low interest as possible. And this happens especially if you have an acceptable credit score. So if you have a credit score of 650 or higher, you can start to negotiate with a bank for a lower interest. Now, this is a really good time. Like, the silver lining of the pandemic is we're at record low interest rates. So now is the time to go to your bank and look at refinancing your debt. Maybe refinancing your mortgage. Mortgage rates right now, you can get a 5-year, I believe, for 1.7. So this is a time to revisit all of the debt that you have and look at consolidating to lower interest so you can get debt free that much quicker. Number 7, borrowing to invest. This is a great way to grow your wealth quickly. So and I'm going to use this example because it's a powerful one. Let's assume you put 5% down on a home worth $100,000, and that home goes up in value by 5%. So now you put 5% or $5,000 on a home, and you also made $5,000 on that investment in that same property. However, if you simply invested $5,000 and that $5,000 grew by 5%, you'd only have made $250 per year. Big difference. Because truly, if you are using other people's money just to buy things that don't appreciate in value, such as cars, furniture, anybody do that? Nothing wrong with that. I just want to make sure you understand that you're blocking your chances to build wealth if that's all you're doing with other people's money, is borrowing to buy depreciating assets. That's what we call bad debt, when you're borrowing for depreciating assets. Because borrowing to invest can allow you to build wealth quickly. So this is why this example is really, really crucial. Borrowing to invest can also work with other assets other than just real estate. In the stock market, the trick is to understand your financial situation and the risk and reward associated with that investment. Now let's talk about number 8. Take advantage of compound interest, one of the most powerful forces in the universe. So compound interest means your money can multiply each year it can be invested, even faster the higher the rate of interest you earn. So compound interest can really help you to build wealth because basically the longer money can sit and multiply. So if you've got 10 years for your money to grow, you have an opportunity, especially the higher your interest rate, for your money to multiply much faster than if you have a shorter period of time. And that's crucial for women who live longer when we live longer. So we have to start thinking about retirement earlier. The earlier, the better. Even if we're putting less money away, that less money has that much more time to multiply. So if you've got 15 years for money to multiply and grow, that money can grow faster than if you only have 5 years. So just keep that in mind and think about what you're invested in, because compound interest really helps you to build wealth faster. And some examples of where you can build wealth is real estate, stocks, bonds, ETFs, mutual funds. Crucial, just to make sure you reduce your chances of outliving your capital. Again, women outlive men by 4 years, and we tend to be savers instead of investors. So we'll put our money in a savings account where we're making close to 0% interest. The money doesn't grow. We feel safe in the initial years, but as more time passes and our money is still worth the same amount, 10 years later, that's when we start to panic. Number 9, this is really going to drive in the power of compound interest. Understand the rule of 72, the empowered woman's fast track to building wealth. So if you want to know how long it's going to take your money to double, divide it by 72. So for example, if we're talking about, again, easy math, 10%. So if we divide 10% into 72, and we want to know how long it's going to take 10% to double your money, that's 7.2 years. If we make 20% in an investment, it's only going to take 3.6 years for our money to double. Because the interest you earn, ladies, on the money you're investing really matters. Time means money is earned or money is lost based on having less time, as I mentioned, for your money to compound and grow. Again, ask yourself, would you rather pay 20% or earn 20%? Because at the end of the day, the rate you earn on an investment really, really matters. And then lastly, 10, build multiple streams of income. The average millionaire has 7 streams of income. Do not fall victim, especially after last year, especially after we're still living in the pandemic, especially for business owners who have businesses out there and you have one stream of income. Do not fall victim to having one stream of income, because this has never been more true as we face this pandemic. How many businesses do we know failed based on having only one income stream during the pandemic? Have you had to rethink your business income stream since the pandemic? Do you have any of these other income streams available to you at this time? Because diversifying your income stream will make your finances more resilient in times of uncertainty. So having, secondary income from a business, rental income, earned income, dividend income, royalty income, capital gains, interest income, diversify your income streams as much as possible, both to income streams in terms of what you're getting as income to pay your bills, but also for future income as well. So again, diversifying your streams of income are going to reduce the impact of market downturns on your overall income. Market downturns for your business, market downturns in the market if you are thinking about your future income streams as well. So don't fall victim. I believe very, very strongly that deciding that you deserve wealth is a game changer. After being suddenly single at a really young age, it became really important to me to obtain financial security because I wanted to learn the principles behind making money work for me. And it led me to create a 7-figure net worth. And I truly don't believe I'm special. I just think I've been doing it longer. And I think it all starts with making a decision to build wealth and to just do the math, to make sure you make the most of your finances, whatever it is that you have to work with. Because I'm here to tell you that money can have an extremely positive impact on your life when you decide you're ready to harness it for the good of your future and for your family and for your community. So ladies, I'm encouraging you, choose to challenge your mindset when it comes to building wealth. So I'm going to give away a prize for those of you who are following along today. What is considered to be a minimum credit score to apply for credit? And number 2, what is the rule of 72? And then finally, how do you calculate your net worth? I'm going to be giving away a book, one of my books called Single by Choice or Chance, for the people who can give me the right answer. So I'm going to give away 2 books for 2 people who have gotten some of the information I shared with you today. Just DM me. I'm sure I'm going to have Melanie share the slides, share my information so that you can reach out to me and I can provide you, whoever gets these 3 answers right, I'll provide them the winner of the book. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It's been a pleasure. If you didn't get if you don't know all the answers of all the questions that we went through in my quiz, feel free as well to reach out to my team. We're giving away a 30-minute complimentary session for people who want to build their financial IQ and who attended this workshop. So just say that you were part of the startup event, and we'll honor the 30-minute complimentary consultation. Thank you so much, everyone. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today.
Jackie. Oh my God, that was so awesome. Every time you do a presentation, it's even greater than before. So this, how many presentations have I seen you do? So, but I don't know. I've lost count, but it's so empowering to see this. And I can't thank you enough. Actually, there's so much nuggets of information in there. And some of the apps that you mentioned, I'm going to take a list of it and then share it with our attendees. So I'll get all that information from you after, and also share your contact information. So, people can start their journey to, let's call it financial wellness first, and then moving on to creating your 7-figure income and multiple income sources. Yes. So
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think we have some questions. I'll ask Aldine if we have questions for you. And
awesome.
Then we can start with that. Otherwise, me, I can keep chatting, right? So
I know. And we can keep chatting. I mean, we can.
Okay. Okay, cool. No questions yet. So let's you and I just talk, because I'm sure that's how it usually comes about. You start talking and then someone has a question for you. So, one of the things I really liked I got a copy of your book, Single by Choice. And I remember we did that at one of our first startup International Women's Day breakfast. We actually gave our participants a copy of the book, and that was when it just pretty much you just launched it at the time.
Yes, I just launched it. Correct.
Yes, and everyone that I've spoken with since that time that has gotten a copy of your book, they can't stop talking about you. And so we have to do a fireside chat, obviously, again, even after today, because there's so many of these women, they still reach out to me and have you spoken to Jackie recently? And we love her book. Yes. Yeah. And that's years ago. You remember that? That's years ago. Yes. And that was at Rose Theater. We had a breakfast event. So, one of the things I would love, I know you talked about Choose to Challenge, but one thing I would love to get from you is, how it's so hard for women to get financing, women business leaders, it's so hard for them to get financing. And even with the programs the government has put out, women are still struggling to get financing. Could you possibly maybe share some tidbits with us as to how they can, find a way to approach this, I'll call it a wall almost in a sense, because you can push it, but it's really getting there. So maybe it's through a support group or something, but we really need to create a way for these women that have amazing ideas to get beyond where they are. We can talk about that.
I think just having this startup community is so crucial to that. And, having those incubator programs where women can get encouraged to take their idea to the next level. I mean, we still have so few 7-figure business owners who are women, right? And I think that comes from not having a female dedicated incubator program where women are invited and encouraged to, take their business to the next level. They're mentored, they're sponsored. Some of the things you've spoken about where they're working with businesses that are a little further ahead, that they can have those conversations with. Because a part of it, and I've been on my own journey to building my business, is not knowing what the conversations are supposed to be, not knowing what I'm supposed to be thinking about at a certain time. So being in a room with women who are having conversations about being at a different stage in their business and having those people as mentors and just being exposed to that really can build a woman's confidence so much, because it's kind of like you can't see something, you can't be something you can't see, right? So I think having, women-led incubator programs where women are invited to be a part of that at all stages of their business. Because what I find with getting finances is women tend to wait too long. Yes. Yeah. So having those conversations earlier, getting a sense of how their business should look on paper, having access to an accountant that understands their business. Because I talk to so many women who tell me they don't really even know financially where they are in their company. So they don't have meaningful conversations with their accountant about where their business is, like, how much revenue did they earn versus how much profit did they make in their business? Where are they in their business now? Like, should they be taking a profit? A problem with a number of business owners, women-led businesses, is they're not taking income from their business.
Yes.
So if you don't take income from your business, then as far as the bank is concerned, what are you really earning?
Yes, that's true. That is so true. And let me see. Should I like to be more involved? Oh, okay. Cool. There's some poll questions coming in. That's awesome. And to your point, like, that's a program that we've actually been working on for some time. And Aldine Copidier, she is a woman business owner, and she is the person that I chose to run this event for us. So what we're doing right now through Fresh CMS events is Aldine's business. And I choose to support a woman-led business because she's been a volunteer with us at Supportiveness for some time. Aldine did a session on HR and what people need to understand, like, when does your contractor become an employee? All these things, like some of the things that you touched on the financial scape that people don't really understand. And I think what needs to happen, and that's what we've been building through Start Appeal, is obviously it's all-inclusive community, but I have a strong focus on women-led business because they need to understand that we are there for them through supporting. And I take it beyond mentoring. I'm also a mentor for Startup Canada. So every so often you'll see me post on LinkedIn, especially this month during the month of March, is through a platform we're mentoring. I have women that have signed up for me to be their mentor, but I'm taking it beyond mentoring into sponsorship. Yes. And allyship is something that's very important because I can mentor you all I want. I can talk to you and tell you this, and this, but guess what happens? It's almost as if I'm talking at you and talking to you. Then when you're left on your own, you're like, okay, so what do I do now?
That's right.
Yes. So that's where sponsorship comes in. I'm taking you with me along that journey. So you and I are I'm making a seat. I have a seat at the table already. So I'm going to take you with me, and you and I are going to have lunch at this table with everyone else. And I'm also going to, before we get to sit at that table together, I'm going to go through the rules of etiquette with you. So when you sit at that table, you're going to have enough confidence. You're going to empower yourself so that when someone asks you a question, you can deliver your response without thinking, okay, that guy over there, or that person's over there is trying to make me feel small. No. That's not the gist of this. You need to come to that table with your confident self. And there's another woman that I will speak about, Leslie M. And, one of her words is, you're going to take your badass self and your swagger and you're going to come straight, right? So, and when she says that, I always laughed about it, but she is right. Because when she talks about, don't let someone take away your swagger. Don't let someone take away your confident self. You're coming there because you belong there. Someone didn't just say, okay, that's just a token person, I'm going to give them a spot. No. You belong there. You've worked hard to get there. So that's why you need to be there. And because you're there, you're going to create the spot for the next person that you're going to pull up and bring them with you.
100%, Melanie. There's so many great things you just talked about there. And I think mentorship is important, but sponsorship is sometimes you don't know what to ask. You don't know what the questions should be. And you don't have the confidence, right? Because it's that whole sense of, people talking at you versus talking to you and sometimes pushing you. I mean, what's great about a sponsor is they can say, I think, because women tend to wait till not only to get money to ask for financing, but they tend to wait till they have everything in place. They think everything's perfect. And sometimes having that mentor or that sponsor that pushes you to say, no, now you're ready. You're actually ready to go. No, you don't need to wait for anything. You can just go hit the ground running now. So I think we need that because of, I just wrote an article and I don't know if I shared it with you, but it's called The Financial Cost of Being a Woman.
Yes, you did. You shared it with me. Yes. And I have to post that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, feel free, because I was going to say one of the things I spent a lot of time thinking deeply about was this, something I call the cost of patriarchal judgment. And patriarchal judgment is all about this confidence building piece, right? That women don't feel confident because we're all affected. We live in a society where we're judged through the lenses of patriarchy. So we're judging others too. But that really keeps us in this position where we're not advocating for ourselves the way we need to. So having people who, men and women, who are sponsoring us, that are pulling us ahead, that are helping us to build, because truthfully, my own experience is, how do you get confidence? You do things you feel uncomfortable doing.
Yes.
And sometimes you fail, and sometimes you don't. And then you start to get more confidence.
Yeah, exactly. And, to your point, we talked about that. And that was even Sara before us. That was something that we talked about, making, like, we wait until we're so confident, we're so sure that we have all our ducks lined up in a row. It's like applying for a role, a position that we see, and we say, okay, I'm applying for this role because I think I'm a good fit now because I've ticked off 100% of the boxes and I'm good. Whereas a guy may wait and say, hey, you know what? I have 5 of those points and the other 5, I can learn that while I'm on the job. I'm going to go apply. Women are like, no, I need to have all of it. No. Like, forget that. And just go ahead and take that chance. I see Aldine posted a question. So, are banks a good place for financial planning? If not, where do you recommend? Well, we have Jackie. She's a financial planner, but let's just start. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think there's good places. There's good people everywhere. Work with somebody who's an independent. So the challenge sometimes with banks is that they might only, and I have friends who are advisors who complain about this, but they might only recommend products through the bank because they are mandated by the bank to push their products. Whereas if you work with an independent advisor and someone who's a certified financial planner, you've got the opportunity to get somebody who can help you sort of think through your finances, help you understand your money story. Some of the things I was talking about, understanding your money story, understanding helping you to understand what your priorities are, fleshing all those things out, helping you to have money conversations with your partner. Because again, if women are living longer, if we're making less and having kids later, and we have more to lose when relationships go wrong, we need somebody in there who can help us talk through the financial implications of all those things. So find somebody who's, got a financial planning designation, who can tell you very, very specifically how they can add value to your financial circumstances. So the banks, sometimes you can find good people in there, but the most important thing is to work with someone you feel comfortable with. I often say, find a referral. Get someone who can give you a referral to someone they had a good experience with.
Awesome. Yeah. And to your point, I know some banks, depends on who you have. Like, I know because we're so digitally advanced and everything is online, I know we're over the time, but I'm just going to have this quick conversation here, is because we're everything's through digital. Gone are the days, and I'm going to date myself now. Gone are the days where you had someone at the bank that you had amazing conversations with. You had, like, we're talking about personal bankers, and you had your bank manager, and they knew you, they knew your parents, and yada yada. But they also understand you, so they would say to you, in all honesty, that yes, this is a really good product, or well, there's other products that's out there that we don't carry. So, get a second opinion. And if there's something here that we carry that you want to invest in, I'm more than happy to help you. When you have someone at the bank that is clear and concise to tell you that, hang on to that individual.
Yeah, go by the relationship. I mean, every business person, startup business, needs a financial planner, a good banker, a banking relationship for loans. You need a accountant, financial planner, good lawyer to help you negotiate, good HR person, and good bookkeeper. So put all of those things in your to-dos for people you need on your list and on your team.
Perfect. Awesome. So, Aldine, I'm just going to check with you to see if there's any other questions before we're going to move into lunch very shortly. No other questions. So we're going to move into lunch, but one of our MPs, she did send a quick video that she shared with me from the PM. And so our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he had a great message for International Women's Day that we're going to cue.
Women and girls are changing the world every day. Indigenous women, trans women, and women of every background, origin, sexual orientation, or age, women with disabilities, women in every community here in Canada and around the world. We honor your power and your leadership.
Today is about celebrating the accomplishments of women everywhere. It's about the women who challenge norms, lift up others, and change our country for the better every single day.
You know, as a couple and as parents, we've made sure our kids understand that not one person is more important than another. Neither Justin nor I are afraid to label ourselves as feminists.
And although many feminists in our country have broken down barriers and paved the way and brought us to where we are today, we have to continue to build on their work. And that takes place in our everyday lives. This goes beyond the economic benefits it creates. This is about young women everywhere in our country. It's about making sure they grow up in a world where they can do and be anything they dream of. And everyone has a role to play in making that a reality. It's especially important right now when women are bearing the brunt of the impacts of COVID-19 and we faced a she-cession.
We know that women, in particular, racialized and marginalized women, have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. They have shared their stories with me. And this pandemic threatens to roll back the progress we've made. We simply cannot let that happen, and we won't let that happen.
If you've lost your job, or if you can't afford childcare, or if you're staying at home to take care of your kids,
or if you've experienced gender-based violence in your own home, we want you to know that there's a path forward. And to truly heal and come out of this pandemic stronger, we must have a feminist approach to our recovery.
As a government, we're committed to that. And that's why we're creating an action plan for women in the economy and a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system so we can get women back into the workforce and make life more affordable for your family. And because we know that not every home is a safe place to be, we're providing support to women's shelters and sexual assault centers across Canada. And we will continue to invest in programs that prevent family violence and support survivors.
You know, my husband and I are lucky to have an opportunity to use our voices to bring change. But we're speaking to you today as partners, as a mom and as a dad and as friends. And we want you to know that we can't do this without you. We all hold the key through our words, our daily actions, and our dreams to build a better country, a better Canada, and to make sure that our kids and grandkids have a solid foundation to build on.
We can and we must work together as partners and as allies to achieve gender equality. We need your help because the reality is that we won't be able to do this without you.
And all of this, friends, starts now. Happy International Women's Day. We love you.
Thank you, Aldine. That is an incredibly empowering message from the PM. I know we've seen support from the government throughout the pandemic and on to now. It's you see it and it may not fit all the boxes for everyone, but it's up to us to really to continue and push through. So after the lunch, we're going to take a lunch break till 12:30, and right at 12:30, we're going to be bringing our Perva till Sana. He is an incredible mentor, but he's also a commercial banker. So he's going to be talking about packaging your loan for success and really understanding what financial institutions may be looking for when you actually go in and you're applying for loans. Today seems to be a day when we talk about ourselves, empathy, and finance. And after Apurva, we'll be talking about marketing. We will have Mark Campbell. He'll be back with prospecting, so finding clients during this pandemic, post-pandemic. We will also have a wonderful presentation from BDC and from Alterna Savings. We will have Alterna Savings representative Susan Henry. She will be talking about their micro lending program, which has been incredible for many women-led businesses because most women really don't, some of them don't need large amounts to continue their business, to keep it growing. And that has been a program that she spearheaded from the beginning, and really grateful that she's able to share that with us. And at the end of the day, I will be joining MP Sahota. We will be joining Karen Perez. She is with Open for Business Brampton. She has been putting on this program for some time where residents and small businesses in the city of Brampton can come up and they do sort of pop-up shops. But it's a great way to really empower your business and move forward. We will also have in addition to MP Sahota, we will have Councillor Rowena Santos joining us from the city of Brampton, and Jennifer Vivian. She is the manager for the Brampton Entrepreneur Center. We will be talking about diversity economics. and addressing the way that we can move forward with business, empower women business owners and leaders to get a bigger piece of the pie, especially now and moving forward past COVID. So enjoy your lunch and join me back here at 12:30. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.